It's time for an alternate timeline, an alternate view, an alternate history of the DC universe. What if your favorite superheroes were introduced in the medieval era? Well, today we're going to explore that storyline with the Dark Knights of Steel, issues 1 and 2. This is the Comicstorian channel where I take some of your favorite trade paperbacks and single issues and I break them down into digestible bites to help you understand. We bring you a synopsis of the storyline, giving you a good chunk of the context, but allowing you to go out and buy the issues yourself so you get more context, more art, or you can go get the next issues still understanding what is going on. So there's no real backstory to give you for this one, guys. It's just a really awesome miniseries created by Tom Taylor, the guy that made Injustice and the guy that made Deceased. So you know it's gonna be good. The concept is simple. What if the superheroes existed in the medieval era? So let's get into it. Most prophecies can be blissfully ignored, but sometimes events are foretold which hold too much truth, and ignoring these divinations would not just be foolhardy, but it could spell disaster. When Krypton met its inevitable doom, a lone ship escaped, crash-landing on the Earth. Inside of it was more than a baby. It was the soon-to-be parents, Jor-El and Laura. But hardly even stepping foot out of their escape pod, Jor-El heard horses and turned back to see knights pointing their arrows at him. He yelled that they are not a threat. His wife is having a child. The knights, they fired. Jor-El screamed and everything turned red as Jor-El's eyes burned hotter than 1,000 suns. And as the young Kal-El was born, Laura panted, asking what happened. Even though there was devastation all around them, Jor-El tells her, "It's all right. Everything is going to be okay." We now jump 19 years into the future to the castle of El. Kal-El called to Bruce, telling him that he'd like to come with. Bruce fastened his cloak, telling the young prince no, and Kal-El tells him why not. He relies on children, but not a friend. Bruce puts on his helmet, telling him, "You're practically a god." Kal-El protests, but Alfred laughs. He can shoot fire from his eyes. Bruce then says that he swore to protect the El family from the one thing that can harm them, and he will confront the Banshee's magic, and he will not lead the prince into danger. Kal-El asks him, "What of you? Are you not immune to magic?" Bruce stares for a moment and then leaves. "Please stay here." Once alone, Alfred tells him that the silent glare is what he means when he's losing an argument. Later in Fest Town, Bruce gets his report from all of his Robins, all telling him that the area is now secure, just evacuating the last to the inn. Bruce walks up to see Jason dragging a man behind him, and when Jason looks back, he says, "I tried to reason with him." As the Robins all clear out, Bruce walks in with his sword drawn, holding it over the Banshee. He asks if she knows who he is, and she tells him, "Yes, you're that bastard Bat Prince." Bruce tells her, "Good, then you know what will happen if you attempt to flee. Are you here as an assassin sent by King Jefferson?" The woman says that she has no wish to harm the elves, no matter how much they wish her harm. Bruce tells her that magic and her kind are outlawed in the kingdom, and that she has violated the law by simply even being here, and she will be imprisoned. She will not be mistreated if she comes peacefully. The woman says that her name is Dinah. And as for quietly, she releases a sonic shout, ripping apart the building. Bruce begins to slowly get back up, with Dinah asking how is he still alive? "Why are you not torn to pieces?" But Bruce bleeds. I don't know. She screams again, much closer this time, but before she could do any real damage, there's a gust of air and Kal-El holds her mouth closed. "Shh, you don't look like a monster, you just look scared." She begins to tremble, and then suddenly she's knocked out, with Kal-El looking at Bruce. Was that really necessary? Later at the Castle of El's throne room, Jor-El asks why did he take the son of the king with him. Bruce apologizes, "An error in judgment on my part." And Kal-El tells him, "Do not lie, I went on my own accord, father." Bruce then says that his Robins are stationed in Jefferson's court, and they've learned that the magical assassin had been sent. But Kal-El says that they can't be sure that that woman was the assassin. Jor-El scowls that they are the last of their race, and he will do whatever he deems necessary to preserve and protect the House of El. Bruce kneels before them, "And I will continue to protect you." But Laura lifts him. "You will not kneel here. Your parents were monarchs and our friends." Jor-El stands up. "If I had my way, you would be sitting here with us, Bruce." "Everyone sees you as gods. I'm just a bastard." Kal-El steps forward. "So, who cares? The entire kingdom does! The kingdom that I serve!" The two go back and forth, and Jor-El stops them, telling Bruce that he would like a word. They step outside and he asks him what is wrong. He seems more agitated. Bruce tells him that he is afraid. Today he stood in the path of destruction and he should have been killed, yet he lives. This is not the first time that this has happened. He was sworn to protect them from magic, but the Green Man, when he attacked, there are things that he can do, and he has come to suspect that there is dark magic within him and he should be locked away. Jor-El goes on stating that he is not cursed. You knew you were a bastard, and that was never hidden from you or the kingdom. Your mother and I was a mistake, but you were not a mistake, and what happened with Martha, that was the mistake. You are my son, Bruce. That is why I strongly believe you should be sitting at the throne. 2 kings have loved you. But at that moment, a magical green arrow finds its mark in Jor-El's eye, and he falls over. Lightning strikes at this revelation that Jor-El is actually Bruce's father as he picks up the lifeless body of his now discovered father. And his eyes begin to glow red. The rain begins to pour all around him, and the rage in his eyes burn hotter and hotter with a flash of red seen by all. Jor-El, the man that he learned was actually his father, was slain by a magically enhanced green arrow. Laura and Kal-El hurry to the roof after hearing the bellowing cry, but Bruce didn't stay to mourn. With Alfred ready with the horses, he raced to the Hob forest where the arrow came from. Alfred asked how could the arrow have flown that far, and Bruce told him the only way that it could have was the Green Man. Another arrow is fired, but letting his abilities take hold, Bruce snatches the arrow aimed for Alfred and crushes it mid-flight. The archer Oliver Queen lowers his bow, asking, "How is that possible?" But Bruce didn't answer him with words. It was with a swing of his sword and the removal of a hand that was sufficient enough to get his point across. It was Bruce who had the next question. "Where is he?" he demanded. And as the assassin refused to answer, Bruce rose his sword again in anger. But Alfred stopped him. Bruce looked down. "It's all right. I'm not a murderer. I can't get answers from a dead man." So the next morning in the Kingdom of Storms, the prophet Constantine sits above looking over the city when a green figure tells him that it is done. Constantine asks what of Oliver, but the Green Man tells him that the ring told him to go without. Constantine laughs. Is that so? Well, you can't argue with jewelry. A short while later, within the castle grounds, King Jefferson watches over his children as they all train themselves in magical ways. Anissa practices her power to move earth, and Jennifer lightning. Jacob calls forth the rain, to which Constantine is not happy that his pipe has now been extinguished. After pulling Jefferson aside, Constantine tells him that it is done. Jor-El is dead. Though they do this to protect the realm, the only thing that he can promise at this point is that the elves are pissed. Which, back with the elves, General Waller is all ready to lead them into war. The jester Harley Quinn suggests that perhaps they should consult Bruce, but that only angered Kal-El more. He shouted, "This is a family matter, and Bruce is not one of us. But before we go enacting war, I want proof first. I want to speak with their assassin." Meanwhile, across the sea at the Amazonian island, word of what happened has reached their shores, and Lois informs Queen Hippolyta. But it wasn't the queen that she needed to speak with, it was the princess. As Diana trained out in the field, she welcomes Lois. And still, Lois's message is not even for her. It was for Zala, daughter of Jor-El. Diana knew that Zala would leave, and with a kiss, Zala left in tears. Diana picked up Zala's sword, asking Lois if it was King Pierce's doing. And Lois says that she hasn't confirmed it, but he is the obvious suspect. Back with Kal-El, he meets with the archer in the dungeon looking for answers, telling Oliver that he could simply kill him with a glance. Oliver says that he is well aware. It is one of the reasons why he and his kind had to be removed. They are monsters and they have convinced themselves of a lie. Now hurry up and kill him. Let's get this over with. But Kal-El stops himself. No, I won't. No matter what you think, the elves are not killers. So later that night, King Jefferson sleeps when there is a sudden tomb from within his walls. He goes first to check on Anissa, thinking that it may have come from her room, but he realizes that this was an attack. He rushes over to Jacob's room to see Zala there holding Jacob by the shirt, floating in the air, and he yells for her to put him down. Zala flies up into the air, telling him, "That was the idea, human." Once high enough, Jacob says that he isn't scared. He could make it rain in her lungs right now, but Zala tells him, "No, you won't," and she drops him. As he falls to his death, Jefferson lashes out with his magic, the one thing to stop the elves, but Zala brushes the attack off, smiling. That tickled. And with nothing more for Jefferson to do, Zala turns and flies off, leaving him a broken man with a dead son. there you have it. The first two tales of our medieval story within the world of DC Comics. I hope you guys have enjoyed today, and let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. Personally, I'm a huge fan of medieval literature, medieval lore, fantasy stuff. I play Dungeons & Dragons all the time, which, by the way, you should go check out my other channel, Dungeons & Ale, where I play Dungeons & Dragons with my friends. And on that note, thank you so much for your continued support. Please consider clicking like, clicking subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time right here.